The first music I liked was birdsong. I loved birdsong when I was a real young kid because it was so pure. And then I just followed the natural trajectory of it, really.
Seeing like the older kids' bands in high school, you know, be like, oh shit, you can just start a band.
I really just kind of learned more about music by like ditching school, to be honest.
I'm old enough now that I feel like I can totally admit to having been obsessed with Hanson at one point in my life.
In high school, actually my guitarist that plays with me now, Peter, he's a couple years older than I am, and he was like, we're gonna bring you up, man, like, you're young, like, grade 10, freshman or whatever, like, yeah, come with us. They, like, bought me a six-pack. I was with all the older kids. They took me to the show. And who was playing? It was a band, a bunch of Edmonton bands. And I was so confused that they all were doing this in my hometown where I'd grown up, and I just had no clue. Like, this goes on in my, like, city? Like, I can do this. This is no problem. Like, it just opened my eyes quite a bit, I think.
I feel like I discovered myself once I bleached my hair.
It was sort of a bodily feeling, just essence, really. It was about essence.
I felt angry about the way the world worked, and I finally found voice to that anger.
That goose pimple thing, you know, the hairs rising on the back of your neck, all that stuff.
It's probably more like feeling like you're in love with somebody. I remember one time when I was in high school, I read this book about Mozart, and the way that the guy described Mozart, it was kind of, it didn't sound like he was talking about music. He was like, oh, and then there's this one moment in the song where the climax becomes, the pleasure becomes almost unbearable at this particular climax. And I remember reading that, being like, that's really intense way to describe that. But that like particular phrase, I think kind of like stuck with me forever.
Hey, you guys, it doesn't have to be like that. You know, it is actually like this. Get up off your ass and fucking do something.
If you're on a stage and had like 500 people staring at you, what would you do?
I'm always nervous, man. I'm nervous every gig till I get up there.
I fell down an elevator shaft, like right when the lights went down, and there was blood on the stage.
When you're spinning the record on your turntable, their sort of like spirit comes out of the grooves, but seeing them live is like this whole other experience, and you almost feel like you're in the presence of like a cult leader or something like that.
I think you get to a point in your life where you realize you're not the young person you once were. You know, like there's a point in your life where you get to a stage where you're like, this culture isn't meant for me in the same way it was before. You know, like it's not to say that you have to stop liking it, but it's just like it's meant to speak. You know, like this. I needed this music a lot more when I was younger. You know, like I still love this music and it's part of my life. But when I was younger, I needed this music because if I didn't have this music, I don't know what I would have done.
And you can get jaded, you know. It's very easy to be like, whatever, like, man, like playing the same songs every night. But then, you know, on this last tour especially, I realized, like, especially with the young kids, it's kind of like these kids are so fucking excited to see what we have to do.
You got a 14-year-old little girl singing Ready to Fight. I mean, that's a trip. I mean, who would think?
When you find a new band that you didn't know existed and it makes sense to you in a way that things didn't make sense previous to that, and you know, knowing that there's always something out there you don't know about.
I'll never stop. I'm gonna be 53 in a couple months, so you know, I'm not stopping anytime soon.
My life is like when you blow up a balloon and you let the air out and it just goes, boo. That's my life.
Part of the jadedness comes from a bitterness that you look at the younger kids and you're like, they can't understand what we had, and what they have isn't what we had. But I think that's, and like that's where you're like, the scene isn't like it used to be and stuff like that. But I think that's very natural, you know, like it's meant to scare off the old. So there could be a new generation.
No change is going to happen through people waving fucking guns and shouting at each other. It doesn't work that way. Change happens through inspiration. The beauty, the silence, the wonder of life is constant. That's what alternative culture is about, is trying to reclaim those elements in ourselves. Sounds like a bird song.